everyone, I'm Tara. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about OCD and spirituality. If you haven't seen any of my other videos about OCD, I am not a mental health professional, but I am someone who has had OCD for a very long time. And today I really wanted to talk a little bit about spirituality in terms of how it has helped my OCD to help give you maybe some inspiration to go down a spiritual path or just to help you learn more. So I would say diving into a spiritual practice has been very transformational for me in many ways, and one of those ways is it has really helped me in my OCD recovery. And when I say recovery, I don't mean that I'm totally free from OCD, but I mean to a point where I feel like OCD is no longer controlling my life. So spirituality and having a spiritual practice is a very broad term. There's so many different ways you could go about connecting with your spirituality. For me, yoga was the gateway to connecting with my spiritual side. And I think yoga is a really good place for a lot of people to start their spiritual journey because there are so many different practices within yoga that aren't solely spiritually focused. So you have more movement-based practices like going through a yoga flow, you have breath work practices. And when you do these practices, although like moving through a yoga flow may feel more physical, like you're strengthening your body, you're stretching your muscles, you're also starting to open yourself up on a spiritual level. Because for the most part, most yoga teachers are going to be guiding you through a yoga class with a deeper intention than just strengthening your legs, right? There's a deeper intention behind it, be it to start to quiet the mind, to connect with your energy on some level, and the classes are usually structured to really help guide you along the process. That's how I teach my classes, and because it feels like something familiar to us, right? Maybe like exercising or stretching, if it doesn't feel like you're going into this spiritual realm, which could be maybe overwhelming if you haven't been a spiritual person in the past. That's why I find that yoga is a really great place for that. And that's where I really started. I originally started practicing yoga more for, say, like flexibility kind of things. I liked it as a workout, and I found as I was practicing that I was coming back to the practices not because I felt like, oh, I feel like I want to stretch out my hamstrings today. I was coming to the practice because it made me feel good on a soul level after I was done with the class. So that really opened me up. And when I did my yoga teacher training, it kind of helped me go even deeper into the spiritual side of yoga. Coming back to OCD and spirituality, I feel like when I was really struggling with OCD, and really probably for most of my life, I really wasn't open to my spiritual side. Like I didn't feel like I had a specific spiritual practice. I didn't feel really connected with my spiritual side. And I feel like when I started opening myself up spiritually, I realized how much I was really missing that part of myself, and that connecting with that part of myself and feeling connected on a soul level and opening myself up to my spiritual side and to spiritual topics really just helped me view my OCD differently and really helped me along my recovery journey. And currently, yoga is still a big part of my spiritual practice, but it has expanded beyond that. So there's really so many different ways that you could go with this. But what I find is that with OCD, we tend to get very connected to our thoughts. Like we really feel like our thoughts define us, right? At least that's been my experience with OCD. And when you start to open up spiritually and go down a spiritual path, you start to realize that you really are more than just the mind and the body, and that the mind and the body are tools to help you interact with this world, but there is something deeper. And you realize that the mind likes to come up with a lot of things to distract you. And even from a spiritual sense, the mind likes to come up with things to distract you from your goals of connecting with your spiritual side, of finding stillness in the mind. And that's kind of like OCD, right? The mind likes to come up with stuff that causes us distress, that makes us not able to function the way we want to in our lives. So through a spiritual practice, you really do start to realize that your thoughts don't define you. And I know in therapy that I had learned this, But it wasn't until I really found my own spiritual connection that I feel like I really did start to truly believe this. And for anyone interested, I do have a Patreon, and this month in my Patreon, we actually go into a topic or a specific, it's called a Yoga Sutra, that talks about getting beyond your thoughts. And this specific Yoga Sutra or topic in yoga probably was one of the most pivotal ones for me that really helped me get over that leap of feeling like I was controlled by my OCD, and it really helped me get past that point of feeling like my mind defined me and finding that connection with my soul. So if you're interested in that, I'll put a link in the description down below if you want to check out my Patreon. Each month we go through different topics to connect deeper with our yoga practice, with spiritual topics, connecting with our energy. And there's different tiers. If you don't like practicing yoga, you can do the first tier, which is more just going over the topic and then doing a meditation. So there's different options there. So I'll put a link to that in the description down below if you're interested in checking that out. And I think another part of coming back to your thoughts and feeling like your thoughts define you. So I know with OCD, I would have, say, a thought that I would define as bad or a thought that I didn't want, and I would feel really defined by that. But if you think about it, you also have good thoughts, right? We have both good and bad thoughts. And why do you feel defined by the bad thoughts and not the good thoughts, right? It doesn't make sense. And I think that's because, at least this is my interpretation based on my spiritual path so far, it's because the thoughts really aren't what defines you. Just like your body doesn't define you, right? The body is just this physical home that we have for our soul. The mind is kind of like that too. The mind helps us interact in this human world, but it's not defining us. So you can't take every thought that you have to heart, right? You can't take every thought and feel like it means so much. And I have OCD. I know how hard that is to do and that that's not easy. And definitely doing ERP work in therapy has helped with this as well. But also just finding that soul connection and really defining more with my soul and knowing that that is really who I am has really helped me in not feeling so defined and bound down by my OCD. The other thing that has really helped me in my spiritual path is just realizing how much in our universe is unknown to us. And with OCD, you really don't like the unknown. So a lot of times obsessions and compulsions are based on fear of the unknown, right? You're trying to prevent something that you think might happen, but we don't have any proof, right? We don't know that that's going to happen. And I think with spirituality, you realize that everything is unknown. And I know that might sound scary, but for me, when I really opened up to this and really embraced the fact that there's so much that is unknown, it's actually really freeing for me. And to me, it's also really cool to continue down a spiritual path and start to uncover these little pieces of knowledge, these little pieces of our spiritual side, and kind of start to see some of the bigger picture, which has helped me really start to see beyond myself and beyond my OCD. So just starting to embrace the unknown on a spiritual journey can be really freeing, and it's actually really beautiful. And I think I talked about this in my other OCD video where I kind of just talked about my OCD story, was that really embracing the unknown and being fascinated by the unknown in this world, in this universe, has been just such a freeing thought for me and has been pretty pivotal in my recovery journey. And on a recovery journey, I just want to be clear, because I don't want it to sound like I just did a spiritual practice and all of a sudden like my OCD was cured. And like I said, I define recovery as more as I can go about my life in a way where I don't feel like OCD is holding me down. I still have times where I notice my OCD, like I'm not completely cured of OCD. And also through my journey, even while I've been practicing spirituality or connecting with my spiritual side, I was still doing therapy all that time, right? Like I was still working with ERP and doing other things for OCD. I only stopped going to therapy probably like 2 months ago at this point. So I still, of course, highly suggest therapy. But I do think starting to connect with your spiritual side and maybe exploring some of your spirituality can be another tool in addition to help you on your recovery journey. And I know they say you can't ever get rid of OCD, and I don't know if I believe that I can totally get rid of OCD. I'm kind of on the fence. Like, I know the science behind it, that there are certain chemicals, like with people who have OCD, we have certain chemicals in our brain, or our brain works a certain way, right? But then there's also my spiritual side where I'm like, well, maybe it is possible. And I read this book pretty early on when I started going down a spiritual road. It's called Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And that book really changed my perspective on being able to heal from things that people say you can't heal from. Like, it really did change my perspective on that if you actually put the time and work in, that it really is possible. And that kind of goes back to being open to the unknown, right? So we might say, okay, well, this is how your brain works and you can't change that, but do we really know, right? We really do never know. So I think that's that part again, staying open to the unknown and being open to the possibility that you can heal. That's really important, because if you don't believe you can heal, then you won't. And like I said, I can't say that I believe that I will never have OCD. I mean, I think there's a small part of me that believes that, but I do believe I can live my life free from OCD. So that helps me on my healing journey. So really being open to heal is going to be so important. So if you open up to your spiritual side, but you still feel like you can't get better, you're going to be blocked. You have to have that openness. The other thing I will say is that going down my spiritual path, which is, I'm pretty open to exploring a lot of different paths. So I'm not in one straight plane. Like, I don't only do yoga for my spiritual practice. I'm kind of open. I like to learn. I see what resonates with me, and if it feels like it resonates, then I'll bring that into my practice. But I will say going down the path has really opened my eyes to truly believe that my OCD has been a struggle that I've had for a reason, and that it has shaped me to where I am. Like, honestly, I don't know. Like, so if I didn't have those struggles with OCD, would I have found my way down the spiritual path? Would I have been led here? I don't know. And I really am starting to believe that it is just part of my journey, and I'm embracing it on a different level. Instead of feeling like angry or annoyed or feeling down on myself and feeling hopeless, like, whoa, or like, why do I have to deal with OCD? Because I've had those thoughts. So if you're having those thoughts, I'm not trying to pass judgment. I've been there. I've had those feelings like, why is this what I have to deal with? In those low times, it's really hard to get past that. But now my perspective is more like, okay, this is a struggle that I have, but it's here for a purpose, and let me see how I can navigate this and how I can get better. Let me see how I can grow. So that's my experience with OCD and spirituality, and really the thing that's most important on a spiritual journey is just to be open, to explore, and to find what resonates with you. And in terms of OCD, I do think finding that connection with your spirit, with your soul, is really so helpful, because we get so connected to the mind when we have OCD, right? Connecting, sometimes even reconnecting with the body and bringing yourself out of the mind can definitely be helpful, which is what I have a yoga class for OCD on here, and we do that in that class. But just also taking that step back and finding the soul connection can help you to stop feeling so attached to the mind. So it's a really beautiful path, and I think it's important for everyone to start to open up to their spiritual side, because we are the mind, the body, and the soul, right? But especially with OCD, I think it's definitely a really helpful journey. So again, I do have a meditation for OCD and the yoga flow for OCD here on YouTube, totally free. I will link those in the description down below if you want to check those out, just to start to explore those practices. Because I do think if you are totally new to spirituality, I really do think yoga is one of the easiest ways to get into it. And meditation is also part of yoga. So if you don't really like moving your body or doing yoga flows, meditation is also part of yoga practice. So there's other ways to practice yoga, but it is a really good way to get into connecting with your spiritual side. So those sources will be linked below. Again, if you're interested in joining my Patreon's not like specifically like, oh, these are the practices for OCD, but the topics I go into on my Patreon are topics that I've resonated with and that have helped me. And like I said, this month specifically, the topic is one that really helped me with my OCD. So it's still a really good place to start to go down your spiritual path. So if you're interested in that, I will link that in the description down below as well. But that's all from me for today. Thank you guys so much for being here and for watching. And for anyone struggling with OCD, I'm just sending you so much love. I know how hard it can be, and just know that it really can get better. If you guys are not already subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button right below me, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.